Make your marks.
You're listening to the Pullbuoy Podcast.
Hello, welcome back to the Pullbuoy Podcast. Steve here, and I'm really looking forward to speaking to the guest we have on today's show. He's been one of the breakout stars of the British team for 2022, culminating in 3 silver medals in Birmingham, but he also set a British record over 100 freestyle at the World Championships earlier this year. It is, of course, Lewis Burras, so let's have a little listen to what he had to say. All right, welcome to the podcast. Someone I'm very excited to speak to, in fact, Lewis Burras. Hello.
Thank you for having me. I'm a little bit nervous, but something about vulnerability within the next hour or so kind of excites me here.
Well, I promise not to ask too many hard questions, but we'll see how we get on. I mean, let's start. You've just come off Commonwealth Games, obviously 3 silver medals there. You had your debut at World Championships, some really fast times at both those meets. You know, 2022 has got to be right up there with your, what you expected coming into it.
I don't know if I ever expected my 2022 season to look like this. But yeah, I'm very glad that now that I'm at the end of the season, I can look back and take a moment just to smile and really reflect on how far I've come and also where I have to go. So yeah, it's been wild. I mean,
you finished 2021 swimming very fast. I mean, you swam, I think, a 50 best time and a very fast 100 in Winchester just before Christmas. So you must have had some inkling that your form was coming back and that you had the chance to do something well in 2022.
Yeah, I mean, my season started on October 5th, and every day since then I've committed myself to, my craft in the pool. I think 4 weeks after I came back, I did a short course regionals meet, 47.9, 21.9. It was nice to see those times up on the board again, even though it was short course. Then fast forward to that December meet at my home pool with really the pressure off. I was able to do a little bit of a taper and I think drop some pretty good times considering.
I think they were excellent times, I'd say, yeah. So
that was the first time I raced the 100 freestyle in 2.5 years. My PB going into it was 48.5 and I was 48.6. So I was quite excited by that, to be honest.
Yeah, and rightly so. I mean, let's rewind a little bit if we may. I mean, we'll come back to Birmingham and Budapest in a minute, but you're relatively new, or to a lot of people, probably relative newcomer to the scene. Yeah. But you've been around a little while. I mean, how do we get here? I mean, you were obviously not completely out of nowhere because you were the 2018 British champion over 100 free. When you were swimming with Ash Morrison at Hamilton, is that right?
Yeah. 9 years with him.
So you'd come out of Dubai and you won that race there, and then I'm right thinking you went off to the US at that point to try out the collegiate system. How did that come about?
So really, from about, I'd say after Champs 2018, it's been 4 years of a lot of ups and downs and somewhat of a whirlwind ride. At that point in time, I had committed myself to the University of Virginia. I swam at the European Junior Championships. I came away with 2 medals there, then made the decision to fly straight out to Virginia, do summer school and try to integrate with the team. And then from there, I lasted 6 months and I came home again. And really it's been very stop and start for me the last 4 years, dealing with mental health, physical health issues, sometimes the combination of both. But through each setback, I managed to get back up and then push on.
I mean, you say you spent 6 months in the US. I mean, that kind of culminated, and maybe not quite at the end, but that was your PB kind of period. You mentioned your PB prior to to this year. It was the 48.58 you'd swum at the US Nationals in 2019. So something must have been working for you in a pool, at least. I think you'd moved to South Carolina. Is that right at that point?
Yeah. So after the 6 month stint at Virginia, I made the decision to leave, come home and reassess my swimming and college options. Luckily, I found South Carolina, or they found me. I really hadn't swum for about 5 months. So from January to June of 2019, I didn't do any training. Went to South Carolina, was told, this summer we're just going to get you back in the water. Let's not set any expectations. But then 8 weeks of training in, they decided to take me to the US Nationals, and from the outside lane went 48.5 to win the B final and 22.1 to win the 53 B final. And that felt good.
So that time out of the water, I mean, you've mentioned you've had mental barriers and physical barriers to your swimming. I mean, was that the first manifestation of those, or?
Yeah, I think a lot of things and kind of bubbled up to the surface, which I maybe I'd kept, within me. But I grew up in Dubai for pretty much 18 years. Very lucky, very privileged to have had that experience, that education, that safety net. But Dubai is a bubble, and leaving that for the first time to go across the world to a new state, a new school, a new swim team, I think I underestimated how much of a challenge it would actually be, and how much growing up I had to do in order to make it, not only as a swimmer but an athlete, not only as a swimmer but as a student out there. And to be completely honest, the reason why I'm not at Virginia or South Carolina anymore was because of me. Everything comes down to what I was doing, whether that would be not really showing up to class, not committing to the team workouts as much as I could, or I have to take full accountability of it.
So after that period, I mean, 2019, 2020, did you go back to South Carolina?
Yeah, I stayed on there for just over a year, and then I think I left South Carolina April 2021. So pretty much as the British Olympic trials were going on, that was when I was packing up my things and deciding where next to kind of take my life, let alone swimming.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that period had been a bit unusual with COVID lockdowns and other stuff going on. I mean, had you been able to swim through that period at all, or were things completely closed down, or how was it?
Yeah, pretty closed down. When I got a phone call from Tim Jones before, I think it was March 2020, saying that the trials are just going to be postponed for a year. Mm-hmm. Nothing you can do. I took 8 months out the water. Didn't touch the water. Just went back to school in that August. Training was pretty stop and start there just because of COVID and all of that. And then really, then took even more time out the water and found myself with Zoe a couple months after the Olympic trials.
So the period that you said you took more time out of the water,
Mm-hmm.
Are you someone that you need something to aim at? I mean, Tim told you that the trials have been delayed by a year. Was that kind of a push? Not a push to stop swimming, but a nudge. Actually, I'm going to focus on something else for a while because I haven't got that at the end to aim for.
Yeah, I could say that I was going to study on my academics, but in all honesty, I wasn't a great student. I really wasn't. I think that period of time I was lost, having trained for so many years towards qualifying for the Olympics, to then have it be put off for another year. Mentally, I think I needed to reset and almost decompress for that amount of time and try and get back into it the following year.
So having come through that period,
mm-hmm.
come out the other side as the world starts to return to normal, as much as it has done over the last year or so. Olympic trials had gone. Had you given up all kind of hope of going to Tokyo and were just looking further ahead, or did you still harbour ambitions?
I think I harbored ambitions for maybe qualifying in the 50 freestyle, but deep down I knew the work hadn't been put in. And to go 21.79, I think, off of that little training, it wasn't realistic. And I'm glad I didn't attempt to try and qualify. And I'm very glad that I took my time getting back into the sport.
So through that summer, were you? No, you were still thinking, right? I'm going to get back into this, and you were just looking for the right home.
Yeah. So I arrived at my dad's place when he was living in Jersey, and I was just calling around to a few different coaches, trying to see, who could I work with, who could mentor me and take me on this path. Because at that point, I needed a mentor. I needed someone more than just a coach, because it was clear that I was struggling in and out of the pool, and I needed someone to guide me. Had a phone call with Ian Hume. We kind of spoke about goals and stuff, and he said, I love what you're telling me, but I don't think I can give you what you want. Have you heard of a lady called Zoe Baker? I said, I haven't. Where's she training in? Winchester. Again, I never heard of the place. Googled it, looked quite pretty. That next day, I had a Zoom call like this with Zoe. We chatted for 3 hours. I think at that night, I texted her saying, my suitcase is packed. When can I come join you? And a week later, I was there.
All right. So it was a meeting of minds. I mean,
yeah. We just kind of got put in touch by Ian, his selflessness to pass me on to someone he trusted. And it turned out to be one of the best decisions I've ever made. But at the time, probably the biggest leap of faith I ever made.
And when you went to join Zoe, I mean, were you physically fit, as it were? I mean, you mentioned you had some physical issues to overcome. How were you when you started there?
I was still kind of recovering from a hernia operation. I was a little slow. I hadn't had much training in me at all. So it was just baby steps at that point. Mentally dropping out of my second university, that was still catching up with me. Just the feeling of failure was making it difficult to feel like I was achieving anything really in my day-to-day.
I mean, this period, you made a comment after one of your races in Budapest about, a year ago, success would have been getting up and having a shower. Yeah. That's this period we're talking about.
This was the period, yeah. Over the summer, with the Olympics on, seeing people that I swam on junior teams with achieving their goals, it did make it difficult. And yeah, those successes a year ago look completely different to what success is today. And, I've done a lot of work with sports psychologist Hannah, who works with Team England, and she talked about how we also have a certain amount of spoons in our day-to-day. And sometimes some things take more spoons. You have to give away more spoons to do certain things. And today I can hand out a lot of spoons quite easily, like getting out of bed, showering, turning up to practice. But a year ago today, not so much.
And was that a big part of your conversation with Zoe, saying that, I've got these issues that we need to address, or had you even recognized them yourself at that point?
Yeah. Accountability and self-awareness was starting to make, a pretty big impact in my life. For the first time, really, I was just able to understand myself and take that time. For example, I lived in a studio flat for 8 weeks over the summer, pretty much by myself. If I wasn't going to training, I wouldn't speak to anyone for a couple of days, wouldn't see anyone. Just having that much solitude really allowed me to just be brutally honest with myself. It was time that I stopped deflecting everything and started to reflect on where exactly I was in life. How did I get here? And how do I get myself on a different path? Because the path I was going down was one which wasn't going to benefit me much.
So you started that period, with Zoe, and we talked. You got some results quite quickly, which must have given you confidence that you'd made the right decision.
Yeah, she didn't expect it. I think after about 3 weeks of training from October, I said, I'm gonna go 48 in December. And she told me, she went, okay, if you think you can do it, then go do it. And yeah, that December meet, going to 21.7, that's when I knew that I'd made the right decision. I was swimming under the right coach, and the path that I was on, it was working for me.
What is it you're doing with Zoe that's clicked? I mean, it's obviously, she's obviously attuned to you,
Yeah.
mentally, but she's evidently doing the right stuff for you physically as well. I mean, what kind of work are you doing with her?
It's intense. It's either we're going hard and fast or we're going slow and purposeful. And what I like about Zoe is she's the first coach I've ever had that has achieved a lot of success as a swimmer. To break a world record, that becomes a part of who you are and a part of your DNA. And she's able to give me that athlete perspective, not only what it was like for her during some sets that I'm doing because she's already done them, or how is it in the arena? How is it in a Commonwealth Games village? What do I need to be aware of so it doesn't trip me up? And just her personal skills, her care for me in and outside the water, that whole kind of combination of things has made it a really successful year for us.
We talked about your performances at trials on a previous episode of the podcast, and Bob, he made the comment that he thought Zoe was a bit of a maverick. I mean, would you say that was a fair description?
I think we're both mavericks, yeah. Outside the box, we may not fit the jigsaw piece, but we get results. And trials was something which I was manifesting for months on end, multiple times a day. My form of escape at that point was visualizing my 100 free at champs. Everything from waking up in the hotel that morning to going to bed at night. For months on end, I had it all planned out, and I was pretty close to the visualizations on that day.
Had you set yourself a goal time? I mean, I've spoken to lots of swimmers, and that you go to bed with a time stuck above your bed, or you write it down, and in your your stretch targets and all those kind of things. Had you visualized that far to a time you wanted to achieve?
I just wanted to win. I was just visualizing getting my hand on the wall first, the reaction and the interview after. For me, I knew if I processed things right, then the time was going to be pretty quick. And to be 1/100th off the former British record, I was very happy.
So, you say you wanted to win. You hadn't thought, I want to go 47 here.
I knew it was probably going to take a 47, but I didn't want to get bogged down on the time because the time's the last thing you're going to see in the race. And there's a whole lot of swimming to be done before you see the time.
Yeah. And people will remember your post-race interview with John Mason. There was a lot coming out of there. You say you obviously thought about it in advance. I mean, it was clear you weren't, it wasn't a spur of the moment thing. But was that the frustration and the difficulties you had from the preceding 18 months? Was that all that coming out in that interview?
I just got goosebumps. It was just a culmination of all the struggles I'd gone through really the past 4 years. 2018 British champ, not racing British champs until 2022. And just the fact that I managed to get through that journey and picked myself up and got myself back to being a British champion again, it took so much out of me. And obviously you could tell by, the emotion and the words that I was saying.
Was it a weight lifted off you?
Hugely. Yeah, hugely. I didn't feel like a failure. That was the first time I went to bed in a good few years, not beating myself up, not thinking I was a failure. And I slept really well that night. And I got home. I just said, I'm a British champion again. I can go to bed now.
Well, it was a fantastic performance. And of course, you also you won the 50 as well at trials and gave Ben Proud his first domestic defeat in quite a long time. I mean, that must have been a big confidence boost as well.
Yeah, that for me was just the icing on the cake. I can only say good things about Ben. Shared an apartment with him in Birmingham the past week or so, and great guy, great competitor. And to beat him on home soil after I think it was 9 years it was pretty cool.
And it sounds to me like you're a swimmer who needs to believe in themselves, and Zoe has helped you with that no, leading into those trials, but were you just feeling much better about your swimming after those results?
Afterwards, yeah, I was able to come away from trials. Well, after trials, I went home to Dubai for 2 weeks, saw my old coach, and then moved out to Australia. So I didn't get much time to reflect, but I saw a direct correlation between the hard work and getting the results. And that's, for me, was what I've learned the most is there are no real, you don't need the bells and whistles. You just need to turn up every day and stay committed to what you said you're going to do long after the mood you set it in is left. And it's like through the consistency, the commitment, the discipline, and the accountability, you put all that together on a day-to-day basis, and it doesn't matter what you do in life, I think you'll go quite far with it.
Mm-hmm. But you didn't hang around, obviously, after trials, because Zoe had already taken a job in Western Australia. How long did you have to think about whether you were going to follow her or whether you were going to try something different?
I didn't really. Logistically, I was like, oh, I'm moving countries again. This may be quite difficult financially, but I knew I was going to follow her out there. It's quite weird to say that in the last year or so, I've moved my life twice for someone. And yeah, I'm very glad I did it. I'm going to start making Western Australia my home and, still represent Great Britain.
So how has the change been to training in Australia? Obviously, you're outdoors in Mandurah. Is it Mandurah?
Mandurah, yeah.
Mandurah, yeah, with Peel Aquatic, compared to indoors in very pretty Winchester.
Yeah.
How has the change been for you?
Very relieving, to be honest. Winchester, beautiful city, nice enough people, but we had the opportunity to really create something special here. Unfortunately, the committee didn't share the same vision. And when the vision isn't shared across the club, it's quite hard to make progress. But in Mandurah, they know what they've got themselves into. They've hired a world record coach. She's brought in a great amount of energy and spirit in the club, and everyone out there is so nice. Myself and Kayla van der Merwe, we've got put up in a house by two families. We don't pay rent. They cook meals for us. They take us to training, and they are so grateful to be able to be a part of the journey. And, if it wasn't for them, the family that I was with, I wouldn't have been able to go to World Champs or to Commonwealth Games. I would have struggled.
But nice training with the sun on your back. I mean, it's mainly sunny, obviously.
Yeah. Winter right now, so it's a bit wet and rainy, but when the sun's out, it's 1 p.m. The music's going. I wouldn't be anywhere else.
Now, some people would say, well, if there was only a relatively short turnaround from trials to World Championships, and the upheaval, if you like, wouldn't have been worth it. But evidently, it did the trick for you to keep going with Zoe.
It was hard. It was really hard. But I told myself, I'm going to be away from Australia for 9 weeks, having just moved there for 8 weeks. But I'm tired. I'm going to be tired doing something that I love. Not many people get to say that. A lot of people just have to clock in, day out, doing something that they don't love, but in order to get a paycheck. I get to do something that I love, and at the end of it, see some financial reward as well. So I was just embracing myself for all of it, and I was quite excited to take on the challenge. Because, for example, next year, when Worlds are in Japan, it's going to be a hell of a lot easier than this summer.
Yeah, there are advantages to being in that side of the world in the short term, certainly. So coming back to Budapest, obviously, it's not the easiest journey from Western Australia, but did you go to Budapest, feeling like you could improve on what you'd done at trials?
I didn't really think about my goals for Budapest. I just wanted to experience all of it. And that was the first time I really stepped into the arena, and I'll never forget it. 3 days after landing, swam the heats of the 4x1 free, was 48.6. I went, oh, this could be a long meet here. I'm not sure if I've beaten the jet lag. But the team got around me and said, you're the guy, you're leading off tonight. We believe in you. Came back a few hours later, prepared, and we were in lane, I think we were in lane 6. We walked out and they announced the Hungarians after us. And as soon as I heard that roar from the crowd, uh, jet lag wasn't even a thing anymore. And just hearing a crowd cheer so loudly for something you're about to be a part of, I'll never forget it.
Wait.
I think after the race, I looked at the guys and I went, "This is better than Christmas."
Yeah, I can imagine it would have been a terrific atmosphere in that pool. But you moved on from there, and obviously went on to set a British record in the semi-final of the individual 100 at 47.63. What do you remember about that race?
Just racing that. And I remember I got to the 45-meter mark, and because I was going to be breathing to the stands on my way back, not seeing anyone. And I just said, "You're on your own now." And just got my head down, stayed big and open. And I touched the wall. I saw the 47.6 and let out a bit of a celebration. And then I looked up and I saw 47.1 and I went, oh. Not many will remember my 7.6 now.
No, but I mean it's a British record, so your first British record, so
yeah, first ever.
So still a fantastic achievement. And and you said you didn't really think about your goals for Budapest, but you must be happy having come out with 7th in a world final in the quality of the final that it was.
Two 7th places in the individual finals, 2 4th places. I'm going to learn and keep learning so much from that meet. Just the experience of the 100 free final, 8 guys in a call room, and money can't buy your way into that call room. You have to earn that experience, and that experience is something that only me and those 7 other guys have shared. Now, I did swim slower in the final, went in 4th, came out 7th, but I'm honestly glad it happened. And there's a lot that I can take away from that moving forward.
I think everyone swam slower in that final pretty much, didn't they? Yeah, everyone was looking at David Popovich. So
yeah,
I think there was a lot of tenseness.
It's interesting because it's more about just racing to race in those finals. It's not about the time. It's just, can you get your hand on the wall first? And I remember coming off the turn next to the French lad, and because my turns and underwaters aren't very good at all, I lost a lot of ground, and subconsciously I tightened up, and then the time was knocked down because of that. So it's moving forward is, how do I stay comfortable under such a high amount of pressure?
Yeah, well, I'm guessing that getting those experiences is a great way of actually learning how to do that.
Because you can't pay for them. You can't simulate them in training. You can try, but you're only going to get it once a year, twice a year.
Or in your case, again in 3 weeks' time.
Yeah, again at the Commonwealth.
So how hard was it to bounce on from that meet in Budapest into I say 3 weeks, I think a month later, to go to Commonwealth Games?
Very difficult. I think a lot of people manage to go home, go back to their comforts, be with their coach, their team, their support network, and reset mentally before they then pushed on. I went straight to Stirling. I was in a hotel room there by myself for 2 weeks. Most days just eating alone, going into training without my coach. And then I moved down to Loughborough on the 10th of July. Similar setup. I must say, though, the Stirling group are fantastic. Tiggy is an awesome coach, great human being, and same with Ian and his group. But yeah, I didn't have Zoe. I didn't have my original support network. So for me, I found it hard to reset, hit the reset button and push on. I was just trying to get through instead.
So Birmingham, though, three silver medals, 2 from the relays, 1 from the 50 free. So, it had a few ups and downs through the 6 days of competition, but it seemed like you went okay.
I'm glad I ended the meet on the way I did. Leading off in a 48-2 one night, 48-3 the next night, was very happy to come away with 2 silvers to the Australians. They were the favourites. And just come that 100 free day, mentally, I had reached my limit and there was nothing left in the tank. And I knew before the race I wasn't going to make it back for the final. Swam it, got straight, climbed up over the top pads, went to the swim down pool and called Zoe, who came up that day to race. And I said, that wasn't the swim I wanted. I had nothing left to give, but I promise you I'll be ready for the 50. And, the next morning I had a chat with a psychologist and we managed to turn my perspective around on things. Again, realizing how far I've come, and this was me reaching my limit after nearly a year of, putting in the work. It was actually quite impressive. And also just acknowledging the fact that, yes, I am tired, but so what? Everyone else is tired and the racing will still go on. And, how do I want to remember this meet? And the night of the 53 was probably the best experience I've ever had.
Do you think, you'd only had that one block of maybe not even a full winter, from October onwards. Do you think that was a factor in, in that hitting that wall, if you like?
Yeah, mentally, physically, starting my season in October after having no base behind me, it caught up to me eventually. But, it caught up to me on day 3, day 4 of my last meet of the summer. So I know next year what to expect and how to overcome it.
Yeah. So you did bounce back for the 50, obviously, picked up that silver medal. That last night, the atmosphere in that pool was ridiculous. I mean, you say it's the best night you had. It must have been incredible coming out into that.
The crowd was absolutely bouncing. I think there was a good few results before the 50. I knew that this is the last home games I'll ever swim in. This is the last time that 6,000 English men and women and children are going to be cheering on for us. So make the most of it. And I think I did. I remember hyping up the crowd a little bit before. And as it settled down, this little girl in the stands, I think she shouted out, "Just go England." And instinctively, I just pointed at her, got on the blocks, raced Ben, and 21.6. It was a nice way to end.
Yeah. And I mean, in our review podcast, Katie, she mentioned she likes the way you swim your 50s, that you finish them really strong. It's almost like you're back ending the 50. Is that a conscious thing, or is it, something you've got to work on at your starts, or what's the deal there?
My 0 to 15 meters, I'm really not that good. Underwater, I don't actually have the mechanics for underwater fly kicks. We were in Loughborough. It was the first time I've ever used a filming system, and so we did some starts, some turns in underwaters, and we were watching it back and we were laughing to ourselves because we're like, it looks this bad, but I managed to go these times. Like my fly kicks, for example, if you see it on the race, the legs are almost apart like that, so they're not even together. I was turning and my hands went in streamline. And there's just things we picked up. But yeah, I knew my 15 wasn't going to be great, but it had to be on the better side of how they usually are. I managed to make it, I think I was 5.54, which is my best ever. Someone like Ben is 5.1 consistently. So it's all about next season is how do I bring my average time down and consistently, let's say, hold 5.3s. Because if I can do that, then I won't have to back end the 50 as much as I do.
But come on, finishing strongly is never a bad thing to do. But yeah, it's great that you've got that upside to work on.
I think my raw speed on the water is one of the best in the world. I don't actually know how. I just kind of do it and I touch the board and surprise myself. But yeah, it's nice knowing that my ceiling for improvement is not only so high, but it solely comes down to if I want to do it. And I'm very excited to go and do it.
And you've given some great interviews after your races this year. I mean, we've mentioned a couple of them already, but speaking to Sharon afterwards, and you said, standing on the podium with Ben, my inner 12-year-old is doing cartwheels or something of that order. That must have been great to.
Yeah, again, goosebumps. No, 12 years old. I hadn't got national time yet. I went to bed every night. I just prayed. For some reason, I just said, please let me get a national time. I got it. And ever since then, it's when I learned to dream, and that dreams do come true. And looking to the left was Ben, looking out was 6,000 English people standing up, and those two flags for the first time that meet, they were raised together. Yeah, wow. The best bit was when they said, if you can stand for the anthem, please rise. And just the noise of everyone standing up, it was, you forget how to breathe almost.
And you were rooming with Ben, you said, has seeing what he's doing, just in training and warm-ups, whatever else, has that been, a positive experience for you? He's the world champion, and let's be honest, he's pretty good.
Extremely positive. He treats his body like a car chassis. He takes so much care in it, and everything he does is so purposeful. And you can see that he's really worked hard on just being in the moment. And I think the more that you're in the moment, in the day-to-day, the more success you're going to gain from that. And yeah, it seems to be working for him. And I've picked up some things from him along the way, which I hope to incorporate next season.
Well, that seems a good time to ask what your next plans are. I mean, you've opted out of Europeans, which, given everything you've said, and your curtailed training, seems like a positive choice.
Yeah, on paper, sounds really nice to do a Worlds, a Commonwealth, and a European in one season, but the goal is Paris and beyond. I want to be wary of burnout. It's happened before. It doesn't mean it can't happen again. And just being strategic, because I still have the fire in me to race, but it's good to just let it breathe for a minute. And then, I'll be flying to Australia tomorrow, and tomorrow will be my last day on social media. Plan to stay off of it until the World Champs are concluded next year, and I hope to win some medals there.
And is that you coming off socials? Is that a kind of a protective measure for your mental health, or is that
Yeah. It's a bit of both. I think social media has its pros and cons, but it's addicting. It kind of gives you that instant gratification with every new follower, like, comment, anything. You get that little hit of dopamine, and it's a pretty good tool for comparison, comparing your life to others. And it's not what I need in my season to get the best out of myself. I have a responsibility to not only swim fast for the people that have helped me on the journey, but also my teammates. I'm on a relay now. I have to lead off of that relay. And if there are things that I can do which are going to help me not only get better in the pool, but as a person, then I think it'd be rude not to do them.
But in the water, you're back to Australia. You're going to get sort of decent blocks of training in. When will we next see you racing? If the opportunity arises, would you go to World Short Course in the end of the year, just down the road in Melbourne?
I would love to. Yeah, I think that would be a great meet to really showcase my improvements in the start, the turn, the underwater, and what a great motivational tool to really give myself a kick up the backside and work on it, because you can't be turning up to a meet like that and not be clinical when it matters and when it comes down to the skills.
So we may see you then, and then obviously next it will be trials next year for the World Champs in Fukuoka. So you'll come all the way across the world for trials, hopefully get selected, go all the way back to Australia, and be ready for the team to come and join you. Is that it?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty easy. Yeah, I just pack a suitcase, sit on the plane for a day, and then I'm there. But no, I'm really looking forward to next season. This year has taught me so much, but nothing is guaranteed tomorrow, let alone for the next season. And everything has to be re-earned. So everyone is back to zero now. And it doesn't matter if you won a world championship medal or if you were 8th in the 100 free final at British Champs. Everyone's at the same starting point again, and it's just who wants it more and who's going to work the most for it.
Are you already visualizing next year's performances, or is that a session that you've got to have with Zoe to set your goals, or no?
Now the visualization's begun. Yeah. Maybe there's another event that I'm visualizing, maybe 100 fly, 50 fly. But no, we'll see. All I can do is just take it day by day, turn up to the pool, commit to the journey, and that seemed to work before. I think it can work again.
Well, it certainly has worked for you in 2022. So I think that's a good time to say, Lewis, thank you ever so much for sharing your story. Congratulations on some fantastic results, and we look very much forward to seeing what you can do next year.
Brilliant, Steve. Thank you for having me.
Thanks so much to Lewis for taking the time to share his story with us, and we'll obviously look forward to seeing where he goes from here and how he performs next year. We'll be back on the podcast after the European Championships to have a look at what happens in Rome. In the meantime, if you want to get in contact, you can find me on Twitter at Pullbuoy or at Pullbuoy UK on Instagram and Facebook. If you're listening on Apple or Spotify, please do leave us a review. We'd really appreciate it. Until we're back with you, thanks for listening.
You've been listening to the Pullbuoy Podcast. For more episodes, visit www.pullbuoy.co.uk/podcast.